Well, good afternoon, everyone. Glad to have you here for the November session of the Society of Agricultural Communication Scholars webinar series. Today we have with us Lacey Roberts-Hill, Whitney Stone, Jacqueline Inj, and Colby Silvert. We're going to be talking about the identifying gaps in training undergraduate researchers in AFNR social science. So as is our practice, we'll let the presenters decide how they would like to get questioned, whether during the actual presentation or at the end. So I'll let them talk about that in just a second. And then after the end of their presentation, time allowing, we will have a chance if there are any updates around your universities or announcements that you'd like to make as well before we head out for this calendar year. Wow, this is the last one for this year. We'll pick up again in January. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the group and looking forward to the presentation today.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Child. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate being here. So before we kick things off, we figure we'd do really quick introductions to kind of explain who we are, why we joined this team, and why we're focusing on this topic. We also had jokingly said if there was less than 8 people, we'd do a quick around the room. I think 9 is pretty close. So I'm going to make an executive decision that we all get to speak, because I know we love turning on cameras and unmuting on Zooms. So my name is Dr. Jacqueline Inj. I'm an assistant professor of Agricultural and Natural Resources Communications here at Kansas State University. And my connection to undergrad research is that I have mentored a few through some small grant projects, and we also have a course here that I teach every other spring. So I will turn it over to the next of my callings in the other list.
I'll go next since I'm the next in line. So I am Dr. Lacey Roberts-Hill. I am currently an assistant professor at New Mexico State University, but in January we'll be at Texas Tech in Lubbock. So gonna make that big move very, very soon. And my connection with undergraduate research is just doing one-on-one mentorships. We have a few students. We don't have a formal course, but we have some students that choose to take on undergraduate research projects. So I have done some mentorship there.
Hello, everyone. I'm Whitney Stone. I'm an assistant professor of agricultural sciences and natural resources communications at Oregon State University. And I have some research experience with undergrads or working with them, but it's more that one-on-one apprenticeship style and mentorship. There are a few programs here at Oregon State that encourage undergraduate researchers. So there's financial encouragement through several programs. And then I just have students that are interested and they can take kind of a project credit. And so have multiple ways that undergrads can currently work here in our department.
Hi, everybody. I'm Colby Silvert. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Maryland, our Department of Plant Science, Landscape Architecture, but within that we have a Ag and Extension Education program. I'm the co-director of that graduate program. Thanks for letting an extension guy in the mix. I am going to share a little bit about undergraduate research, but my experience has been with undergraduates recruiting both volunteers and paid undergraduate assistants, looking at mentoring them, and then recently having some conversations with colleagues just about some of the time constraints and barriers that they're facing in this.
I think I got it now. I'm also the master of the PowerPoint, which means I can't see my microphone right now. I know we're in AgCom and we're supposed to be techie, and I'm trying real hard. Okay, so let's do a really quick around the room. Just say your name, where you're tuning in from, and maybe if you're faculty or a student, and then what your connection or experience is with undergraduate research. So on my screen, I will help give a little bit of navigation. First on my screen would be Dr. Courtney Myers.
Hi, everyone. I'm at Texas Tech University. I'm a professor. I'm also our graduate studies coordinator. So I begrudgingly sometimes will work with undergraduate researchers, but honestly, I've seen so many of them come to me early in their program wanting to go on for their graduate degree. And I think that giving them opportunities to gather some undergraduate research skills makes them much more competitive and a better master's student for whoever gets them in that next step. Thanks for doing this session.
Next on my screen would be Lauren Chase.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Chase. I am a senior instructor at Oregon State University, but I'm logging in from the state of Montana, where I live, and we are actually having our first snowflake drop right now. So it's starting to snow. I will hold my Gilmore Girl references in for myself. But my experiences with undergraduate research is I've actually had the opportunity to work with Dr. Lawson and Dr. Stone mentoring some undergraduate researchers. So excited to learn more today.
Next up is Dr. Jason Ellis.
Good afternoon, Jason Ellis, Department Head Communications and Ag Ed at Kansas State. So I'm dialing in just down the hall from Dr. J. She would not let me join the call from her office, so I had to use my own screen. Experience with undergrad research, have been involved back from my days at the University of Nebraska with specific students at an undergrad scholars program there that funded undergrad research, and then taught a course, so kind of group-based scientific methods kind of approach that Dr. J has picked up and is teaching here at K-State. So see a lot of value in it, students engaging, learning, just another piece, and K-State has made undergraduate research one of the 4 pillars of our applied learning initiative in our new strategic plan.
Up next, I see Erica Summerfield.
Hello, I'm Erica Summerfield. I am currently an assistant professor at South Dakota State University. So I just graduated from Ohio State, where as a PhD student, I got to advise some undergraduate researchers. So that was super cool. But now here at South Dakota State, we do not have a master's program in agricultural communication. But I have a lot of undergrads who are looking to potentially do master's programs. So trying to get them more into research and get some ideas from some of you that have already established those programs.
Great, thank you. Next up is Kara Lawson.
Hi, I'm Kara Lawson. I'm at Ohio State, and I really like working with undergraduate researchers. I find them to be very inquisitive and curious, and I think they're a lot of fun to work with. Dr. Fisher and I are trying to work on some things to teach better undergraduate research skills. So it's good to see everyone here today who is also interested in this really important topic.
Thank you. Next is Laura Fisher.
How did I know I was coming up next? I'm Laura Fisher. I'm an assistant professor in agricultural communications at Texas Tech. I've worked with quite a few undergraduate researchers. As Dr. Lawson said, they're just a lot of fun to work with, and they're very curious. And we're working on some curriculum on undergraduate research.
Thank you. Next is Sharon Wagner.
Hello, everyone. Sharon Wagner, assistant professor at Abraham Baldwin Agricultural College. I started working with undergraduate researchers during my PhD program, and I'm continuing that here at ABAC. We do have a formal research class for undergraduates. I am not the instructor of that. Dr. Moore, Austin Moore, is the one who's teaching that, but I'm working with students who are interested in going to grad school and helping them find suitable projects to give them experience and something on a CV before they even apply to help them be more competitive.
Thank you. Up next, I apologize if I say your name wrong, Pam Axman Barker.
You got it. It's not too scary. There's an X in there, but it's you nailed it. 12 letters and a hyphen. So I'm Pam Axman Barker. I am at the University of Illinois. I'm a teaching assistant professor, and I have not done a lot of work in the undergraduate research space, but we're looking to kind of grow that here at the U of I, and I'm excited to learn from y'all.
Great, thank you. Aaliyah Reibold. I don't know if I said that one right either.
Very good. So my name is Elia Reibold. I'm a master's student at New Mexico State. So I actually get to work with Dr. Roberts with the Young Agri-Scientist program, where I get to be that peer mentor for undergraduate research. But then also prior, I did do undergraduate research under Dr. Stone as well.
Great, thanks for joining. Tracy Rutherford.
I joined late. I'm assuming this is just introductions. So I'm Tracy Rutherford. I'm department head at Agricultural Leadership and Community Education at Virginia Tech. I've been around longer than most of you. And so I've worked with undergraduates in a very, except for Ricky. So I've worked with the undergraduate research. At Virginia Tech, we do a bridge program, and undergraduate research is one of the ways that students can meet that requirement for their experiential education. And so we've focused on really developing a strong platform for student development in undergraduate research.
Great, thank you. I think last but not least, I think we probably all know Ricky Telg, but he was explaining some of his connections to undergrad research before we started the webinar. So I'd like to give you the opportunity to share that as well.
Sure, real quick. I'm Ricky Telg, University of Florida, and my connection with undergraduate research, I'm the undergraduate honors coordinator for our department. And so students who want to graduate with highest honors here have to do an undergraduate honors thesis. And so I'm the one who coordinates that process, developing some kind of online training modules there. But I'm not sure that we've done a really good job of preparing our students there. So I am very interested about this topic. So that's my background. So.
Okay, thank you all. A few more than 8, but I always think it's important enough an opportunity to have a little bit of perspective of everyone's experiences and kind of interests of what brought them here today, because we are going to have an opportunity for some discussion. So a quick lay.
Sorry.
I was gonna say, I think we missed Taylor Forster.
Sorry, Taylor. Now, last but not least.
Totally okay. No, it's totally okay. I appreciate you. Thank you. I am Taylor Forster. I'm also joining from Oregon State University, like Dr. Stone. I am also an assistant professor of agricultural science and natural resources communication. And I don't have too much experience with undergraduate research, much like Dr. Summerfield. I also just graduated my PhD program to start this position. So most of my advising in that space has been really preliminary, like research design, survey advising, things like that. But looking forward to learning more about it. Thanks.
Thank you, Taylor. Sorry, Taylor. Is there anyone else, just in case I've been missing faces, anyone else? Okay. We're gonna move forward then. So the goal for today, we're gonna give a little bit of background of kind of what brought this team together and the work we're doing now and how we got started in this space. Go over some existing research, because there obviously is existing research and efforts going on. Do a little bit of a discussion, exploring the issues around undergrad research, talk about some current practices that we are putting into place and trialing, and of course, leave some time at the end for some questions and answers from the group. So a little bit of background, this project started at NACS last year, or this past NACS. We did a professional development roundtable discussion where we first talked about obviously like this growing interest and the importance of this higher impact experiences for undergrads to have some research experience. But talking about, as we mentioned, the constraints that happen in that space of the fact that it's apprenticeship style, right? So it's a lot of one-on-one time for the mentor, mentoring several of them. Not a lot of programs have a specific course. So we started looking at some best practices that specifically in like a qualitative realm. We know like we have a lot of nuance, right? And it's hard to explain some of these things in an apprenticeship style format, but there's a rising interest and rising need to have multiple methods and a lot of exposure there. So some common challenges we were seeing from literature had to deal with a sense of overwhelm, right? Learning about qualitative and quantitative and mixed methods and how it's applied in different contexts and just the nature of how research works. You can lack the amount of time you need, especially even if you have a dedicated course or dedicated resources. Do you have enough time in 16-week, or I guess if you're a quarter system, right, like 9-12 weeks, to really give an undergraduate the breadth of experience they need to have a positive experience and hopefully continued exposure there. So some of the literature was saying that it might be helpful to have like longer term programs, right? So you could have, instead of bringing students in just to have experience in one specific piece of a project, right? A lot of times we bring in undergrads to help with data analysis, but they don't get to see the lifetime of a project from start to finish. So at NACS, we had this great conversation at the table of, we had 4+ universities present talking about Again, time constraints, or what resources do I share? Or am I doing a good job? Do they feel supported? Can I have multiple undergrad researchers making a cohort of support and things of that nature, which led us to, again, looking at some options going forward of how we can contribute to this body of research. We put on the pictures on the right here. We're showing that a lot of institutions currently have or are making different centers or programs dedicated to undergraduate research and professional development. So obviously this is a focus not just in our discipline, but also across campus. So that's a little bit of the background of kind of the initiation of this project. And now we're going to talk a little bit more about existing research in this space and kind of the gaps that we're trying to look into and start contributing to. So turn it over to Lacey.
Yeah. So again, thanks, Jacqueline, for kind of highlighting how did 4 different universities come together. And I think it is a great representation of truly this topic is for everyone, for every university, for whether you're a land grant or not. We talk about undergraduate research a lot, and it's not a new topic. So we want to definitely recognize the existing expertise that has been talking about this. So in 2022, actually, Kara and Laura, I'm glad y'all are on here. Y'all had a webinar on mentoring undergraduate researchers, which really kind of started my interest in being a part of this conversation. And there's various grant projects that have been funded around this topic. So for those that are newer and entering into academia, know that this conversation is not brand new, and we are not at the forefront. In fact, we're just trying to find where we need to still fill gaps as we are getting more people interested, and specifically within social science research, because there are so many interesting nuances there and a lot of qualitative research. So in the past, we've had those past webinars, and the whole point of this was really to bring the conversation back up, kind of refresh it, renew, talk about what's been happening since 2022 and since we've already been in this kind of process. Other things I wanted to talk about, there's great textbooks out there. The Craft of Research is one that I use as kind of a piece in my class, like classroom, my mentorship role. It's a great book, but as hard as undergraduates, if they are doing undergraduate research on top of their entire semester, they don't always read through that book. And so again, we come back to this problem of, well, how are we improving our undergraduate researchers? How are we mentoring them specifically within ag, food, and natural resources and social science? And I did some digging and I was like, well, are there other councils, other places that have information for us? And there's a National Council of Undergraduate Research. It is designed for all fields of research, but they are more about supporting programs that are trying to get established within a university rather than that support for faculty members, maybe for that one-on-one kind of focus. So they don't have any formal training materials, which again leads to this problem of, well, where can people go, especially younger faculty members, if they're looking for resources? Where do they go to start this journey of undergraduate research mentorship? And so that leads us to what Colby is going to highlight of just how we identified some of these gaps, but also, we want to involve many voices in this conversation because it is so popular, because it is so important, and we know that it really builds up our students' skill sets. So Colby, I'm going to let you take it away to really identify the problem and get our voices heard.
Thank you, Lacey. So you've heard gaps quite a few times. So part of that is because we're looking at this through a needs assessment lens, bringing together colleagues across the country. If you look at our spread, it does cover across the United States, and looking at how we can tap into your ideas, your input, and come together to really address to build more efficient and responsive ways to support our undergraduate researchers and support you because you are at the front of mentoring them, bringing them on board, and preparing them to be future researchers through their undergraduate experiences. So I don't think I need to push this too much, but a needs assessment looks at that level of what should be and what is and what's in between and how we prioritize some of those gaps. The ultimate recipient of the work we're doing would be the undergraduates, but you would be that provider, that service provider type level in the needs assessment. So it's really important that we talk to you, and we're going to have some questions here in a moment. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, so where we are now is coming together with key stakeholders, with the community that supports this issue, and exploring this issue to before we do the formal assessment, to start to do a bit of informal probing to get some ideas to brainstorm, ensure that we're not duplicating work that Dr. Lawson and others have done, but rather building on that and figuring out where we can prioritize together. The point that I think has been emphasized, what's different, is we're looking in the social sciences related to agriculture, natural resources, and how we can address undergraduate research in that way across the country, but not just not too broadly, I should say, in terms of the technical or other sciences that you could look at here. So we can jump to the next. So what we want to do here is open up for a few minutes for each of these questions to learn from you. And we have some ideas to share, but we think it would be most useful to hear from you all. This will give you a little bit of an idea of where at this early stage the four that we are focusing, where the four of us are focusing, and where maybe you can contribute. So one of these issues is how can we look at undergraduate researchers and the network that they build, the social capital that they are able to gain through their undergraduate research experiences. So that could be through other undergraduate researchers, that could be through mentoring and through some of that support they're getting from others. But what we're wondering is, in your experience, where have there been significant barriers that may prevent undergraduate researchers from building a network and then getting that social capital that can prepare them for the future? And to open up, we would ask people to unmute or to drop in the chat, but we hope some people would raise their hand or unmute, so then we're not in silence, but we'll be monitoring both. So let's see if we can get some awesome ideas here.
I'll jump in so it's not silent. I think sometimes our undergraduate students are still trying to figure out what they want to do in the future. And sometimes that might limit their ability to kind of stop and reflect on some of the bigger picture items. I'm trying to interpret this question how you intended it. There's also a bit of imposter syndrome or a power dynamic that might be in play to allow them or encourage them to ask questions that we know are great questions that other people are asking, yet they might have concerns about looking silly or insecure.
I think that's a great response and helpful. Do you see ways for them to lean into their peers as well, in addition to faculty and experts?
Well, I'll comment quickly and then let other people have hands, but we're blessed here that we have a pretty strong graduate program. So almost all of our undergraduate classes have a graduate student in them that they can look to as a mentor. That's not something that I got exposure to as an undergrad. At the time, K-State didn't have a master's program. And so that's one thing that we're doing well. And our college is trying to lean in that a little bit better. And Dr. Fisher can comment more, but trying to incentivize our graduate students to be more visible in their mentorship capabilities.
That's excellent. Thank you. And I see, Dr. Tell, you were next with your hand up on my screen.
Yeah, I'll just be real quick. I think with Lisa's comment in the chat, time is a huge factor. It's specifically not only time to do the research, but also not having a course or topics or content built into the curriculum to allow students to really learn what it is to be a researcher. It also puts a barrier on faculty who are maybe doing like this on a one-on-one type basis as opposed to a course. So yeah, that whole factor of time is a big one for everybody.
Yes. Thank you for the contributions in the chat. It does tend to be that the students that are pursuing undergraduate research are working or have other responsibilities, that time on both their side and the faculty is a big barrier. Jason Ellis, Dr. Ellis, I saw you were next.
Yeah, I think to the question to the point about having a class to build a cohort, I think it does really help with that aspect, especially amongst the undergraduates. But, and maybe Dr. J, you can talk about this, and maybe you haven't seen this experience, but when you have it as just one course, and wanting to give them that really full research experience of kind of from ideation all the way through the kind of scientific process, you have 16 weeks to do that. And so really being able to give them a rich learning experience as opposed to like this high speed, superficial kind of, you're getting slightly below just reading about the scientific process in a book by going through the class, but really having those, taking a master's degree where and you don't expect the undergrad research experience to be like a master's, but really to hit all those pieces of the process, they just get a full understanding of what it involves. The time to do that in one course is almost definitely, I feel like not enough to give them a rich experience. It's just enough to barely make them even dangerous at understanding what undergrad research is and can be and how it can build on. But then also I think, according to your point of students thinking and trying to figure out what they're doing, I find that we have a lot of students really, when we look at going from undergrad to graduate school, we have a lot more interest in doing that. And I haven't read the higher ed literature on maybe why that is, or if that's a bigger trend, but anecdotally, I see some that come in with so many hours that they're graduating from college in like 3 years. And so they can barely legally buy a beer and they're going out into the workforce. And they're not really prepared and fully ready for that experience. Or they're feeling shorted of only been in college for 3 or 3.5 years. Like, I don't want to give that up. And so I'm going to go on to graduate school. And then we have that conversation. Is that the best thing for you? Not that we don't want to have more students in our programs, but if you don't know what you're going to do, it's going to be even more expensive to learn how to do that in your grad program, and you're still going to come out maybe even more confused.
Some really good points. Yeah, I think there's that balance in figuring out timeline, but also gauging commitment when an undergraduate approaches you about research. In my experience, it's hard to know what they're aiming for, what they're committed towards. I talked to a faculty member at another university who said choosing one goal of, say, it's one introduction of a paper or it's one poster at the start and working towards that, they found to be effective, but people have found different things. And I know, Dr. J, you were mentioned. I don't know if you had anything to contribute there.
Yeah. No, I echo Jason's comments of, my gosh, 16 weeks flies by when you're trying to cover such a broad topic and how it can be applied. And of course, you want to give them the autonomy to be curious. I think is the first entry to research, right? Being curious, being able to ask questions and explore their own question. But at the same time, that could take 2 months of them figuring out what questions they have, what are the right methods that they can use to answer the question, and how do we translate that to IRB. So here, how I've kind of whittled that down for people. We'll talk a little bit more later too about, have a chance to talk about like what we're all doing and how it's working. But I get existing faculty from within the department that have smaller data sets that maybe they weren't going to use to do anything, but would be perfect for a student poster. So I'll give the students maybe 5 or 6 project options so they can, there's a set amount of methods, there's a set goal in mind. We already know what we're going to do with it, but they still have some autonomy. I think the peer-to-peer learning, like that network, can be hard. Like, again, in the class, you get a cohort, and here it's normally like 10 students. So they really get to know each other well when they're working on these projects. But outside of a class setting, the most recent project I had one undergrad researcher and one grad student who are both new to qualitative methods. And that's worked really well, having that, like having 2 of them together, and also having one that has a little, that can be a co-mentor of the undergraduate student. But that being said, I also worked with them for a year on a project, and we had a lot longer time to like digest the material. So
great. Well, thank you all. We want to give some time, but Lacey, I wanted to, because you've been monitoring the chat as well, see if you had any recap of that.
There's some great comments, a lot about how, so Laura talked about how not having a class makes it difficult for that, or not having a formal program makes it difficult to not feel like a part of a cohort, which I want to bring up Erica's next comment. She talked about funding for undergraduate students, but specifically, she said fellow students not being as motivated to participate. And I'm curious, and I want to pose this question to other mentors of, do you see sometimes that peer mentorship or peer interaction almost negatively influencing, like they're like saying, you don't have the time for this, so don't do it? Because I'm curious if that's something that we also have to have to fight against. And so Erica, I see your hands up. I would love for you to expand on that a little bit more.
Yeah, I was a PhD student at Ohio State where they let us advise some undergrads with some assistance, obviously, but I had a research team of 5 undergrads that started, which I was really excited about. And at the end, I had one super motivated, did her poster, actually got like the full research credit. And so I think what happened is it sounds enticing, it sounds great, I want this. But then when it gets down to it, it is extra work. That's a lot of times not in their program plans, potentially not incentivized, other than like maybe an extra line on your diploma that may or may not be worth it for some of them. So I think I'm struggling with this team of 5 could have done some really cool things, and the one did great work. But we were very limited where all of a sudden now she was in charge of making the poster, writing things. It took a lot more mentorship with the one than it did when I had 5 active ones for a short time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, we are recording everything for the presentation and in the chat, because this is all really valuable input for our work together. But we do want to continue with the next question just so we can keep on time here. And then some of this will overlap, you'll see, with the next question if you're able to go to the next slide, Jacqueline. There we go. Awesome. So what we're wondering is the unique case that we have here of coming together across the country, rather than one institution or even one region. Where could we streamline training and building capacities on a national level? We talk often to faculty that have a lot going on, and meeting with an undergraduate regularly, having them join at different capacity levels with different commitments, something we talked about. It can be a struggle putting that time in and really figuring out how to tailor their approach to each of those. So does anyone have any ideas? We have ideas, but we wanted to ask you first of where we could maybe streamline some of this on a national level and put some resources together to be more effective in this way. Kara.
Whoops, sorry, camera was going off and on. Yeah, I think this is so important, and there is such a need to kind of streamline these efforts, because I think it's pretty obvious that a lot of us are kind of having similar questions and hoping for things to be better for the undergraduate researchers, right? So I think that it calls for building out some curriculum while also recognizing that there's going to be a lot of nuance between universities, between programs, between different colleges. So I would like to pose kind of an invitation, and I'd love for Dr. Fisher to jump in here too. This spring, some students at Texas Tech and some students here at Ohio State will each be involved in undergraduate research cohorts, where Dr. Fisher and I will be testing some curriculum. So we would love to have feedback from you guys, because I'm sure we won't capture everything that's needed here, but I think maybe perhaps like building some kind of toolkit, which is kind of like what we're hoping to do, recognizing that there's still so much work to do, and there's certainly opportunities for everyone to kind of get involved. So Dr. Fisher, did I capture everything?
Yeah, I think you captured everything. So we have a USDA funded project, and kind of the end goal of our project is to develop a undergraduate research curriculum toolkit and get some feedback on it, see how it works. So I think you hit that spot on.
That's great. And that's definitely something we want to build on, and some of the ideas around networking and peer-to-peer influence, because that's coming up, and support across institutions. If there's ways for us to partner, I think there will be good opportunities there. And then I think your point, Kara, is really important about what's unique at different institutions, but what cuts across, and being able to figure that out would be really important. And then I see, Lacey, we have some stuff coming into the chat.
Yep. So I was gonna say, one, I'm very glad that Kara and Lori all are able to talk about, because we saw, like, as a part of this conversation, we saw the grant and we were like, wow, this is wonderful. And we're looking at where can we continue to build and add to those different parts of this conversation. So I'm glad y'all were able to plug your work there. Erica commented, she said, maybe some online course adoptions for undergraduate students, maybe targeting introduction to specific research methods, if they could be shared across universities, or webinar opportunities targeted to students. So yeah, I think webinars is where we're starting to see a lot of information go, because people can access it on their own time. When we talk about time in the earlier problem about undergraduate students don't have the time to necessarily do all these things, that webinars could be a great piece there. And then Sharon commented saying, I found that peer influence is a positive for recruiting students to research. You know, one student wants to go to grad school and they drag their friends into the project. That experience generates interest. And so they didn't know they had, which is great. And yeah, I think it was wonderful. They actually, Laura and Kara talked about that recruitment. So plug for y'all, in that previous recording, they talked about how to recruit some undergraduate researchers. But I do think that maybe brainstorming some ideas for that national collaboration of, hey, if you are interested in research, maybe something more unique than just New Mexico agriculture could be interesting to you. Because we have some students that they get so inundated with New Mexico agriculture that when we talk about it, they're like, oh, okay, I'm bored with it. So looking at how we could connect students to our peers at different universities and say, hey, well, you want to learn about a different crop? Go to Florida and learn about citrus, right? Or something else that could maybe spark their ideas again. So Laura, you have your hand up.
So another thing that I've been thinking about this whole time during the conversation and talking with some undergraduate students, I've been trying to recruit them into our first cohort, and they say, what am I going to do with research and industry? And I think being able to show them real life examples of what industry is doing, whether it's social media analytics, focus groups, interviews, surveys, and being able to say, okay, this might be academic research, but how could you use this if you went straight back into industry? And so those are some conversations that I've had. I don't know if I took that the wrong way, but like when we're recruiting, being able to show them how it could work.
Love that.
That's a good point. We may even think about some mentoring opportunities from people that have more of an industry connection or have applied research for industry purposes. But that's a really good point. Well, I think we will jump to the next question to keep with the time here, which people have started hitting on some of this, and we have some ideas, but what are some of the best practices you have used to make your life easier, but then to really help these undergraduates be successful, set them up on a positive path in research in our fields, to address some of the issues we're talking about or other issues that you think can be brought into this conversation. So we'll open up this last question. I'm supposed to appreciate some silence because everyone
no
is
one wants to share their secrets.
I see Sharon at the top of the list.
Well, I was just going to share the experience I had at Texas A&M. As an institution, they have a program for undergraduate research, and most of the people who get involved with that are working on hard science projects. As a PhD student, I got involved, and I was one of the only ones who was doing social science. But to have something institutional that provides recruitment with project names and things like that for students who might be interested in something other than what they're, I'm tired of New Mexico ag, I want something different. They can maybe see what individual researchers are working on. And then they also had mentorship for the grad students who were mentoring the undergrads. So that program doesn't work here where I'm at because we don't have any graduate students at all. But for those of you that do, it's a nice process to train the graduate students how to be a mentor for their own graduate students when they become a professor. But it's a very formalized program with meetings and projects and assignments and all kinds of things. That's a good thing to, I think, maybe look at as how could we roll that out at other institutions and adapt it so it's much more flexible for social science versus their primarily hard science focus. But we had a lot of people get involved in that just wanted to come play and didn't want to necessarily go to graduate school, and or they weren't sure, and this is their way of deciding whether or not they would go. And I think that publicizing it is half the battle. That there's an opportunity to do that before someone actually comes up and says, I think I want to go to grad school. How can I make myself competitive? And you say, okay, you've got 1 semester left. Let's try to find you a research project.
That's great. We'll look at that from Texas A&M. That seems like a really good example to learn from. And what popped into my head is even looking across the country where we have some of these multi-state or cross-country projects focused on social science in our fields. We may be able to better promote those and connect with this national network. Kara, I saw you were up next.
Oh, sure. Just one thing kind of came to mind for me. Working with the undergraduates that I've conducted research with, I think there's like one common thread that has typically made things go well, and that was just the mutual interest in a research question. So I'll be honest with you, I'm a little bit uncertain how to approach this with Laura and I's cohorts in the spring, because we probably won't have that individual one-on-one project opportunity. So I think that's something to consider, like how to encourage that excitement. I guess like amplify the excitement a little bit, because it's easy to do one-on-one, but I think within a group it might be a little bit more of a challenge. So like as our teams move forward and as our profession moves forward, I think it's going to be really important to consider that, like as we think about amplifying this and growing these opportunities for undergraduates. So there's so much to do, you guys, and I'm so glad that you guys are interested in this too. This is super cool.
And I wanted to just plug, so it really fits with like what Kara talked about. Laura put in the chat, she talked about publicizing and honing in on friendships. Those friendships and that peer-to-peer is so strong within our undergrads and stronger than what you see in graduate school, that that's a great way to kind of loop them in and make them feel capable. One thing that I typically do to make students kind of get over some of that power balance is I make them think about a research project they could do within their classroom. So they're used to being with their peers, they're used to being around them. So if they're going to ask questions, they're not as intimidated to ask that of, industry leaders or, somebody that is seemingly out of touch. But looking at starting a project that's in a classroom or within a group of people they're familiar with has been very helpful in getting students to kind of dip the toe and then feel more confident and go through there. So yeah, friendships I think helps all around. So wonderful there.
Absolutely. And I will see if Lacey, if you have any last things to add here, but then we'll pass over to Whitney with some of the final slides. Okay.
That's all that's in the chat.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for the wonderful discussion. Just to kind of, where do we go from here? What can we do? People are doing great things already in their own practices and mentorships and classrooms. And so where to start, just qualitatively, we were thinking about how, and just also just when working with students, it's important to acknowledge traditional power relationships. So I think that was mentioned, that power dynamic, whether that be the imposter syndrome or that, do I feel safe asking that question? Can I ask that question as imposter? Is this even relevant? And so how to do that can vary between practices of how you just like to mentor. And so some ideas that we've had and what I've tried to do is get to researchers to develop their own epistemology statement. And so this can be tough, right? Because epistemology is something like we might not even get into, right? With working with undergrads, right? We're just trying to get through the basic research process. So some of these things might be out of the scope, but I've found that really working and understanding students' backgrounds can really help inform. So unless we if we don't write a formal statement. We can have that kind of epistemology, where they're coming from and how they're approaching research and how it might be different from our own, so that we understand when we're trying to, for example, teach maybe qualitative coding, if things are aligning, it's not because they're not understanding coding, right? They're seeing things from this different viewpoint. And so really, whether doing a formal process, a written, kind of exercise in a classroom or with your mentee, or just having that relationship, if you have that time to build that kind of knowing where your students, kind of their biography, because what it says to me a lot of times was taught to me is like your research is your biography. So kind of tying back to like, yeah, it's really important to get students excited about topics they're interested in, if you can focus in on that, which sometimes we're limited in what we can do. But doing this could provide a greater understanding of how each party approaches data analysis. And so again, is this the only way? Of course not, but this might help with those, how do we get that started, particularly with the undergraduate level, when you have, limited time to talk about maybe these larger concepts, and to really help with that relationship. So yep. So in conclusion, we know there are previous efforts going on right now, and also university centers that provide resources. Often, sometimes these resources might be geared towards STEM, at least in these university centers. I wanted to give maybe like 2 or 3 minutes if anything wasn't shared. And also just kind of recap on what I've heard. We've talked about how mentoring undergrads can be fun. It maybe has happened before when you were a master's student or a PhD student, or there's opportunities at your institutions, or you have classroom styles. However, there are these barriers. There's an insecurity, there's an unknown. What's the value of myself doing research as an undergrad when I can't see what I'm doing in the future? And then how much time it takes, maybe the lack of incentives to have folks engage in what we know is such an important practice for retention, for well as also critical thinking, and to go into their careers. And so these were just kind of some of the ideas, and that there is this need for this national connection. We're working on it. And so how can we make this easier for everyone, and kind of think about ways to connect students with each other? So I just want to open up a few minutes to anything that wasn't shared. We kind of had brief discussion, but if you had something that we didn't have time to really expand on, or if we didn't see your hand, I just want to open up a few minutes for that.
I kind of have a question or a comment, I guess would be the more accurate way to phrase it. I have a lot of online students, and at Oregon State University, about half of our undergraduates in the College of Agricultural Sciences are online. So I'm really looking forward to Dr. Lawson's and Dr. Fisher's results on how this goes, because I have a lot of online students who want to do undergraduate research, but it's not offered to them as an opportunity through colleges. And so I don't know if you all looked at that or thought about it, or have any comments about our completely remote students.
So I will say, Lauren, just as a group with the 4 of us, because we've had to do everything online, it actually has been a common stream of what we've talked about, of how do we reach, especially when we're looking at that national kind of need, and also how do we expand this to be accessible by so many people. So that online piece has been a conversation that we've talked about, and something that we've thinking about, of like accessibility to a variety of students. I'm not sure we have like just one answer, but I will say it is something that has been, especially after COVID, talked about, because we see a lot more students that are doing kind of hybrids, right? We have students that are having to work more and take fewer classes. And so, yes, it's been thought about. We're thinking about, well, what resources could be accessible from anywhere at any point in time. So we're thinking about resources like curriculum, resources like, hey, I have a questionnaire form that's easy to fill out, and putting that somewhere that students online or even in class could be together. And I think one thing that would really help is truly finding a way that students can network, that if there is students that are online, they could go and find students that are working maybe within that same university, and getting a chance to chat, right? Creating some opportunities for, hey, you won't see me on campus, but I would like to visit. You are having this experience in undergraduate research. Can you give me some peer kind of feedback. So I think that for us as our group, we're looking at that network truly as that helping piece for those online students. Anyone else in the group want to add on to that?
I wanted to just add, it was a little bit outside of the scope of this, but I recently submitted a grant where we were working across the College of Ag. I think we can all know that like in social sciences, a lot of what we do takes less resources, right? Than some other like disciplines. And so we were working with people in agronomy, in animal science, in ag econ, and trying to make distance research experiences, again, for the accessibility piece and access, right? So trying to get people's buy-in to do this extra time and work, it requires to mentor a student for a distance where they can't necessarily come to agronomy plot and plant their seeds and come out every week for these trials. It's definitely something that's a challenge with the other disciplines. And so far, the only thing I've found like through that submission process was you have to find, unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, you have to find the people that are willing to sacrifice that extra time just because they love working with undergraduate researchers. So for us, like obviously it's the funding, so I can like ship them materials or get them like a way to come to campus several times that year or something like that. So it comes back to the issues that were already raised earlier in the conversation of time from the faculty and the commitment to like do kind of the extra steps it takes, and then funding to make it worth their time and get the materials they need. So no answer there, but such a good question.
Thanks.
All right, so I think that is it's the end of this webinar.
Yeah.
We appreciate the conversation. We appreciate hearing what's going on, kind of the pulse, what's working, what's being done, what efforts are going on out there, and just really your time and feedback today. It's been nice to talk to folks and see folks. Yeah, if you have any questions.
I want to give a call to action. So if you are not involved in undergraduate research yet, go find an undergraduate and try and mentor them, really, because I think it further improves our graduate programs and it further improves just our industry and agriculture in general. So if you haven't done it yet, don't let this be discouraging as we're talking about gaps. Go fill a gap, okay? Good. That's my call to action to all of you. Go find a little undergrad. All right, I'm done, Dr. Taug.
Very good call to action there. Thank you so much. Great discussion in person and on chat as well. We do have a few minutes to see if there's any announcements folks might have. I'm glad to see some new people on the call as well. Glad to have you all on board. This is a good group to be involved with on most third Mondays of the month, fourth Mondays of the month. We were different this time around because of the Thanksgiving holiday. Any announcements you have before we head out? All right, Erica, I see a hand up.
I have more of a question than an
Sure.
announcement. I'm in South Dakota now. So South Dakota State University, a lot of our students are more regional than just like within our state, which is a little bit newer to me compared to my last two universities where most of our students were like from our state with some surrounding. I'm wondering just from you guys, I'm trying to do a little bit of research on some skills that are needed from our employers, which studies have been done in the past with certain states, but that will not necessarily work in the state of South Dakota. So I don't know if anyone has any advice for looking more regionally than like at a state specific level that could potentially help when we're looking at things for a school like South Dakota State University that has quite a variety of students.
Okay, someone want to take that? Thoughts there? I can take a stab at it. So what I would suggest, Erica, there's been some research on what kind of on a national level as far as the skills and things that you could potentially extrapolate for your region based on your experiences. One of the things I tell folks right off the bat when you're starting a new program or getting into an AgCom program is to get to know professionals in your area. That might be something, even if you can do just hate to say it, a quick and dirty survey of some sort to find out what are the needs, almost like a needs assessment, an early needs assessment that you would find in the regional area there in South Dakota, to at least give you some data points to begin that process as you're developing your curriculum there overall. And then again, look at the literature. It might give you some ideas about what are those competencies people were looking at for graduates too. And if
Erica, I
you're
would just add this because I was working with a student today on a project related to this. I would look at your state and surrounding states, anything that you have from the state legislature or state Department of Education on workforce development. There's probably really specific things in there that are directly related to your curriculum. And it really helps you show the value of your curriculum in when you're doing recruiting and everything. So, I mean, there's especially a lot of I was going to say soft skills, but really all the skills we teach in our classes, the technical skills, the relational skills, everything I think is very related to what most states are saying that they're looking for in their workforce development.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Sure. Any other comments or questions, ideas, thoughts? And that's part of what we're doing here, folks, too, is if you have any questions or anything at all that you could feel like could help your program, this is a great forum to throw questions out there to see what the thoughts are overall. Hearing none, let me give you a quick update. January 27th is when we will reconvene. It's 2 months. Wow, 2 months. We'll be off for the holidays. Katie Sanders will be talking about using the responsible research and innovation framework, agricultural science communication, moving toward participatory methods. And then soon after that, we'll have the National Agricultural Communication Symposium. That'll be in Irving, Texas. If you're not sure where Irving is, it's between Dallas and Fort Worth. Hope to see a lot of folks there for that. And there's lots of meetings coming up too. Southern Region will be meeting there as well. Oh, Lacey says, if you're a next paper reviewer, don't forget, dun, 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 dun. Reviews are due December 2nd. Way to motivate everyone. Yay, before we go off for Thanksgiving. Hopefully everyone has a great Thanksgiving break. Go ahead, Lacey. I'm trying to build you up there, okay?
Yeah, sorry, but if you can, because it's going to be a quick turnaround, we had an extension on our paper submission. So if you submitted, make sure that you do your review so we can get those turnaround and let you know what was accepted into conference. So please, 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 I don't want you working over the Thanksgiving break, but they're due December 2nd. Okay.
Great stuff, but they're still due, whether you work on now or next week. Have a great Thanksgiving. I'll see you all in about 2 months. Thanks. Bye.